Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Poetic Philosophy, episode number 125, Light and Shadow. In the book Matthew, chapter 5, verses 43 to 48 of the Tree of Life version, it says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Because he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Even the tax collectors do the same, don't they? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than anybody else? Even the pagans do that, don't they? Therefore, be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect." The poems in this podcast are inspired by this chapter and verse in Matthew 5. We tend to ignore the shadow side and only focus on the positive and the good. But the shadow side is a part of us too. The story of Cain and Able says as much. In the poem, The Light of Death, it shows us that rebirth is always happening. Every day in this world gives us a chance to change, to see things different, to be reborn. In the poem, The Wayward Ones, gives us a chance to look at our shadow side, the side of us we hide, and learn from it, because it is from our greatest failings that we make the greatest success. Also, this poem, The Wayward Ones, and Matthew 5, tell us to love our adversaries because they are a part of us, a part of the one God. After all, what is forgiveness? And finally, the poem Dance of Creation shows us that when we heal and acknowledge our shadow side, we will create great things. If we didn't have the night, what would the day mean? God created the day and the night, right? By creating light, you also have the shadow. Today's quote by J.J. Dewey is, "Achieving union with your own head and heart is difficult indeed, but achieving it with two or more people is a Herculean task. However, the reward is great power to move through any obstacle." And again, that quote is from J.J. Dewey from his website freeread.com. That's FREEREAD.com. The Light of Death by Robert G. Parent. March winds blow across the barren landscape, stripped of all its beauty. Trees bend to the will of the wind. Tall human structures stand silent and lifeless. Stars look down on the bare landscape and winks. The man on the moon smiles down on the reverence of the trees to the wind. The sun warms the human structures to give life to the lifeless. The March winds remind all of the light of death, spreading through the bare scene, and celebrates the oneness of rebirth. The Wayward Ones by Robert G. Parent. Those who want to separate ignore our true need is to unify. The socialist, the adversary, imagine them listening to the truth, the human consciousness. Those who live in illusion forget of our unity and are a part of us. The Spirit of God spreads through our collective, shines light on the darkness. We all need to enter into wisdom, gather the lost sheep back to the whole. We still need to protect ourselves and our families while still correct our separateness. We must be wise, realize the potential for growth. It's the journey that defines who we really are.
Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
Dance of Creation by Robert G. Parent. The dance of shadow and light is the essence of learning, of creating, of discovering, of knowledge. It's the essence of life. The shadow gives us the mystery. The light gives us enlightenment. Mystery opens us to enlightenment, and enlightenment opens us to mystery. There is not one without the other. To know ourselves is to embrace both. Where there is darkness, there is knowing. Where there is light, there is sight. We learn the art of creation here in this school. We wear shadow and light. We see what we know. We create the reality we live. From the mysteries within, we see the beauty of life, the dance of shadow and light.
Hi, this is Will Brown from Cloudy Day Art, and you're listening to The Right Stuff with Robert G. Parent.
The Poetic Notebook for today. Read other books of poetry, both old and new. Pick one poem and ask yourself a series of questions. Do I agree with this piece of writing? Is the author of this piece missing something or telling me something I didn't know? Do I understand this author's perspective on this piece? Answer the questions and have a dialogue with the author on this piece. Use free writing and just let this flow out of you. Let the words flow out of you. Treat the author as a character in one of your stories. Remember that a poem should say what it says and even more without explanation.
Irish drinking songs, Scottish bagpipes, tonally trad, jigs and reels, Celtic rock. If it's independent Celtic music, you can find it on Mark Gunn's Irish and Celtic Music Podcast at CelticMusicPodcast.com.
This country is on the brink of a downfall, but the people elected Donald Trump to correct the balance sheet of our economy. Also, the people need to come together, because if we don't unify under our Constitution, what will come of this country? We, the people, created this country to where it is now by our past votes and non-votes over the decades. We need to forgive our past mistakes and move on to the future. I hope you enjoy this podcast and stay creative in the magic of life. Thank you for listening. All the poems in this show are in my poetry book, Spellbook of the Poet, found at Amazon.com. Just do a search for Robert G. Parent on Amazon.com. You can also check out my other poetry books on Amazon.com and payhip.com/poetry by Robert Parent. And if you're looking for inspiration, check out my X feed at www.x.com/podcastbard. Thank you for listening.
Powered by Cast Blaster.